So this book is called Iransi by Chooks Logbonam. He reproduced an interview that was granted in 2008 by T.Y. Danjuma. I'm just going to read the interview. It says, what happened was that after we arrested him, I lost control. He's talking about Iransi. I stayed in the barracks with the adjutant, the chief of staff of the commanding officer. I stayed with him in a single officer quarters, and it was there that at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I was in bed when he came and knocked at my door. He said, sir, do you know what has happened? I said, no. He said there was some trouble in Abeokuta. He said there was an Igbo officer holding a secret meeting with all the Igbo officers in the officers' mess, and our boys went and shot all of them. What we're reading here is exactly what we read in Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria by A.H.M. Green earlier. We're talking about a phone call, and also in IBB's book, Johnny in Service, where they attacked, those Igbo officers. So he says there was an Igbo officer holding a secret meeting with all the Igbo officers in the officers' mess, and our boys went and shot all of them. Who are our boys, quote unquote? Northern soldiers. Remember, Igbos did the killings that took place in January 1966. They killed non-Igbo senior army officers. Only one Igbo officer was killed, but Igbo wiped out almost all the senior non-Igbo officers. We rounded up all the people who did the killings because we all helped Iransi to abort the January coup. They were rounded up and put in jail where they were being paid their full salary. They had television. They had everything there despite being detained, and nobody was talking about court-martialing them. Nobody was talking about court-martialing them. Instead, the newspapers, including the Daily Times, wrote to the effect that the boys being detained were national heroes. National heroes because they killed corrupt politicians. You didn't see anything about army officers. They killed corrupt politicians and replaced them with Iransi, whom we would call Ironside. In other words, they killed corrupt politicians. How about the soldiers? They killed the soldiers because there would be threats to Iransi. It was an Igbo coup designed to do two things: either to have an Igbo civilian to become prime minister in the person of Kingsley Badiwe, or to have an Igbo military officer or the GOC become the head of state in the person of Iransi. So if you were corrupt and you killed the politicians, why do you have to kill the officers? You already know the answer to that. He didn't say, so he says they're national heroes because they killed corrupt politicians. He didn't say anything about army officers. They killed corrupt politicians and replaced them with Iransi, whom we would call Ironside. Very insulting and, in my own opinion, provocative. They were saying that those boys should be freed. Tension started building. Riots broke out in the north, and it was because of the riots that broke out in the north that Iransi started going around to talk to traditional rulers and the army leaders. I was in his convoy. We got to Ibadan. We had a meeting with traditional rulers and leaders of thought, at the end of which everybody was asked to sing the national anthem. It's funny that every single book you read about 28, they all mention the national anthem. It's interesting. All right, we all sang the national anthem. In the night, we had dinner and we came back. We dropped him, Iransi, at Government House and then went to the barracks to stay with the adjutant. Then at 1 o'clock in the night, there was bang, bang, bang on my door. I said, what happened? He, adjutant, said there was some trouble in Abeokuta. I said, what was it? He said the man on duty officer, saw the commanding officer holding meetings in the officers' mess. All the officers that attended that meeting were Igbos. They left out non-Igbo officers. The duty officer called 1 or 2 soldiers. They cocked their guns, went there and rounded up everybody. They thought it was a joke. One of them had his staff machine gun by his side and he bent down and attempted to pick it up. They opened up on him and shot him down. They sprayed everybody, killed everybody there and started telephoning. They rang Ibadan. It was then that this boy woke me up. This was what happened. The press had been calling for the release of the January coup plotters. Now our boys had created an excuse for the release. After killing these people, it is a draw. They killed army officers in Lagos and all over Nigeria. Igbos did it. Now, Igbos had been killed in Abeokuta. That would be the end of it. I said no. I asked the adjutant, who was in a position to know if the Supreme Commander at that time, Iransi, was known as Supreme Commander, if he had been told. He said no, he didn't think so. I said, okay, he should get me some soldiers. He brought soldiers. I didn't come to Ibadan with combat dress. I had to borrow the combat dress of an officer about my size. It was an American combat dress. This officer had just come back from the US. You know, when you travel with the head of state, you have to dress decently, wear service dress and so on. So I borrowed fatigue, wore it. In fact, I wore it over my pajamas and left to the adjutant. I said, take me to the government house. We got there. We asked soldiers who were on duty to ground arms. They all grounded their arms. I told the adjutant what to do. Soldiers grounded their arms. We disarmed them and armed the soldiers that we brought. Meanwhile, the anti-tank gun Iransi convoy was there. The commander was there. The commander was from the garrison in Ibadan. We knew him. We told him. He said we should use the gun to blow down the building. I said no, there's no need. The head of state was there. We had to arrest him. We were there and waited. Anytime anybody came out from the building, we arrested him. They removed their shoes and we asked them to sit down. Then the interviewer says, why were you doing this? We didn't want any violence. We wanted to arrest him. Iransi. That's T.Y. Danjuma responding. We wanted to arrest him. That's Iransi. We wanted to arrest him alive and go and lock him up. We wanted to interrogate him to find out the role he played in the coup, January 1966. His stories didn't add up about how he escaped from Flagstaff House, where he was staying at number 1 Glover, Ikoyi, and ended up in Ikeja. Who knows how he escaped? If you want to know how he escaped, you have to read Nigeria's 5 Majors by Ben Bule. He escaped because a man from his hometown, who was part of the coup plotters, called him Okafor and Oji. They told him before they got to the house. They're just deceiving everybody. So they said they don't know how he moved from Ikoyi, from Glover Ikoyi, and suddenly disappeared there and reappeared in Ikeja. Anyway, let's continue. His stories didn't add up about how he escaped from Flagstaff House, where he was staying at number 1 Glover Ikoyi, and ended up in Ikeja. How it came about that Njoku, who was supposed to have handed over the command of the largest garrison in Lagos, which was then the Ikeja garrison, did not hand over. Njoku was still in command, and he, Iransi, went to join him. We were going to interrogate him about all those, or at least that was what I thought we were going to do. So everything I told the soldiers to do or not to do, they obeyed until eventually, first, Adekunle Fajui, military governor of Western Region, came out of the building after he waited. Every time they sent somebody out of the building, nobody went back. So Fajui came down. As he came down the steps, I saluted him and said, "Sir, you are under arrest. Hands up." He looked at me and called me, "Danjuma." I said, "Sir, you are under arrest." He raised his hands and came down. He said, "What do you want?" I said, "We want to arrest you and we want to arrest the head of state." He said, "And you are going out with him?" I said, "Yes." And then the interviewer asked, "And you were supposed to be on the Supreme Commander's entourage?" T.Y. Danjuma responds, I was there. I went to Ibadan with him. What do you mean by supposed to? Then the interviewer said, "Because you were now arresting." T.Y. Danjuma responds, "Yes, I was arresting." He, Fajui, pleaded with me not to go up with armed men, that he was going to go up and call him, Iransi, provided I guaranteed his safety. I gave him my guarantee. I said, quote unquote, "I guarantee your safety." He went there and didn't come down, so I decided to climb up. As I climbed up the steps, armed soldiers followed me. I had a grenade in my hand. I didn't have any arm. As I came, Iransi was seated. Faji was by his side. I said, "Sir, you are under arrest." And I gave him the order to stand up. Reluctantly, Iransi stood up. He used to carry a staff crocodile. He had it in his hand. They both came down. Faji was still asking me about guaranteeing my safety. I guaranteed his safety absolutely. So we came out of the building, down toward the car. One of the soldiers said we shouldn't allow him to carry his crocodile, that there's juju. I said no, there's nothing in it. He said he would disappear if we allowed him to carry it. He started to stop and I told him to shut up. That was the time I lost control. The soldier battened me and pushed me aside and took charge. To my greatest surprise, the adjutant, who was, these were his troops, I was a stranger. They were obeying me because everything I did they liked. They liked what I was doing, but the moment I told them not to do something they didn't like, they rejected. I expected the adjutant who was there to intervene. He probably incited them. He said, "Yes, the soldier is right. This thing here," that's Iransi's crocodile, "is his zasa. It's juju that will make him disappear." When you say crocodile, it's not like a real crocodile, it's a staff. right? But it looks like crocodile. Like his stick is always carrying all over the place. It's juju that will make him disappear. So they took the thing from him, pushed him aside, and bundled him and Fajui in a vehicle and drove away. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. The front of the government house was littered with people without shoes, people who had come to get ready to go. They asked every one of them to sit on the floor and they removed their shoes. They all sat down, including the head of service, Chief P. Odumosu. I came down. They, the soldiers, drove away. There was nobody to tell these people to go, so they all sat there. It was I who said, "What are you people still doing here?" Quietly, they realized they were free to go. Question. They, that the soldiers, are driven away with Faju and Rossi. What of you? Tiwa Danjuma responds, I had to hitch a ride to go to the barracks. They left. There was no vehicle even for me to leave that place. They just drove away, taking them away. So I had to make my way back to the barracks. If you read General Gowon's book, it is there. They named names of the people who actually took Iransi away. Now, there are a lot of lies. I read some very funny lies told by Iransi's ADC, whose life I saved. He was an Igbo officer from Abakaliki area, tall, a good-looking chap. After the war, he came back. I saw him. We shook hands and I gave him some money. I read his account. We captured a lot of literature in Enugu. The Igbos named his account, including what happened in Ibadan and what happened in the north, as pogrom. I read all the accounts there. It was there that I saw the evidence given by this man in order to... He must have felt guilty when his boss was arrested and taken away, and he went away and he went home empty-handed, without anything, even though he was his ADC, and nothing happened to him. By the way, I found out that ADC turned out to be... Was it Wanko? I think it was Andrew Wanko. He had to tell a lie to justify how he came out with his limbs intact. He gave a long story of how he escaped, what happened, and so on. That man told a lot of lies that gained currency. Iransi had two ADCs. One of them was Colonel Sonny Bello, and the other was this man. I prevailed on the soldiers not to do anything to anybody. We arranged for him to escape and go away. He went home and started telling lies. He told a lot of lies, which I read in the account he gave in Biafra. We had an inquiry. People came to give account and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, I didn't keep it, but I remember that the stories that gained currency were from that man. So someone says the adjutant created the problems. He said no, he didn't create the problem. The Igbos who killed our senior officers all over the place created the problem. They created the problem. They sowed the wind and reaped the problem. It wasn't him, the adjutant. They were reacting. They were avenging what happened in January. The July coup was a revenge coup. So the person asked, what's the name of the adjutant? He says, Garba Paiko. Was he a major? Major. He was a second lieutenant. You were a senior. Oh yes, but when it comes to coup making, there is no rank. The coup is a bandwagon of hierarchy. This was his unit. He knew the boys. I didn't know them, but he knew me. He used me. Then the person says, you were lucky. They didn't mistake you for an Igbo. Then he says, Tiwa Danjuma responds, oh, easily. I was lighter in complexion than I am now. Many times they took me for an Igbo. So the adjutant didn't create the problem. I don't think you people know what happened. What would you do when you went to bed and woke up and found out all the people from your area in the army, innocent people, were killed in their beds? Some of them even with their wives, all done by Igbo officers. We bottled up these for 6 months, from January to July. Then the opportunity came for revenge. In the army, you are taught that when you are fired upon, you take cover and return fire. We didn't return fire immediately. We gave Iransi a chance to deal with the people who killed our seniors. He did not. We couldn't understand. If politicians were corrupt, why didn't you confine yourself to killing politicians? If it was necessary that the army should take over, why was it that this same army should eliminate the cream of that army and leave us with absolutely useless people like Iransi, who was a desk clerk head of state? We couldn't understand it, but we bottled this up till July, and when the opportunity came, we decided to revenge. This is what happened. And they ask the question, people blame you for what happened in Ibadan, but as it is, the adjutant more or less instigated the soldiers. He responds, yes, this is what I suspect. My suspicion is borne out by the fact that he did not do what I would do if I were in his position. He, the adjutant, approved of what the boys did. And that's it. That was Tiwa Danjuma talking about what happened in the 2029 counter-coup. Now you know.